So this is an independent lecture. You're going to need your headphones for this. So go ahead and put your headphones on and follow along the slideshow as we go through the notes from this section. As you see on your notes, there's a chart with macromolecules in the center and divided into 4 sections: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. We'll be going one by one into each of these sections to understand what they are. Now, macromolecules, what are they? If we break down the word like we do always in biology, macro means large. So these molecules are actually a composition of smaller parts to build up and function in our body. They each have different functions. So if you look at this chart here where it says organize your thoughts, they each have a very specific function in our body, and we get these macromolecules from our food. Just as a general overview, take a look here. Carbohydrates are our main energy source. Lipids, or as we know them as fats, are long-term energy storage. Proteins, they build things or tear things down, while nucleic acids are our information storage. You remember yesterday we did the Express Lab where we picked 7 different packaged foods and we determined the kinds of nutrients in those foods. Now, why did we do this activity? I wanted you to analyze the different types of food that you eat and determine whether that food is considered high in fats, high in carbohydrates, or high in protein. Now, this graphic organizer basically shows us the 4 different types of macromolecules. Let's start with our first, carbohydrates, on top, and then we'll move clockwise and we'll go through each of these macromolecules. So, beginning with carbohydrates, start taking notes in the carbohydrates section and pause at any moment you need to in the slideshow to continue your notes. So, carbohydrates, also known as carbs, are our basic energy source. The foods we eat that are carbs are our fruits and vegetables. They are our grains, our rices, our breads, our corn products. These carbohydrates or carbs are our main energy source. So again, carbohydrates are our main energy source, and this is the formula of that macromolecule. So C6H12O6. Make sure you have this in your notes. What does that mean? That means that there are 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 6 atoms of oxygen. C6H12O6. Okay, you're going to need to know this formula because it is very important in the workings of the cell. This is the main energy source for all our cells, and it comes from plant-based materials. So carbohydrates are always made by plants taking energy from the sun. Now, look at the structure again. Why is it called carbohydrates? Well, if we break down the word carbohydrates, we're talking about the first part, carbo, and the second part, hydrates. Carbo actually comes from the word carbon. And then hydrates, if you're hydrated, means you have water. So if you look at the carbohydrate formula, the H12O6 at the end of the formula reminds us of H2O because there's twice as many hydrogen as there are oxygen. So this is the formula for carbohydrates. You need to memorize it and write it down. C6H12O6. Let's take a little look at the structure. You don't need to memorize the structure, but it'll be good if you put it in your notes. And if you look closely at it, it has 6 distinctive sides, so it's a hexagon. So anytime that carbohydrate is drawn, it is always drawn as a hexagon. You don't need to put all the rest of the formula in there. But anytime you see a hexagon in a cartoon form or in a simple drawing, it's usually in a hexagon, and you know that that's a carbohydrates. And we'll see one in a second. So if we look here at the cartoon of the simple carbohydrate, it's drawn like a yellow hexagon. We call this a simple sugar, or simple carbohydrate, because it is only one carbohydrate molecule standing on its own. What are our simple sugars or simple carbohydrates? That's the glucose, fructose, and sucrose. These are the simple sugars found in our food, like fruits. Fructose. Sucrose is sugar, naturally occurring sugar, like in cane sugar. And then once you add that simple carbohydrate molecule and you add it with other carbohydrate molecules, we call this complex carbs or complex carbohydrates. You probably heard this before. They are larger, even larger molecules, and they are cemented together. What are some examples of these complex carbs? We're talking about starch. Now, you probably heard this word before. Starch usually comes from plants. So you have cornstarch or potato starch. Now, when you eat these carbohydrates, they take longer to digest. That's why they're called complex carbs, because your body doesn't easily break them down. It takes a little more time. So when you eat something like a potato or something like corn, they sustain energy longer. In contrast to when you eat a piece of fruit or a vegetable, that energy is quick and our body uses it very quickly. Another example of a complex carbohydrate is cellulose, and cellulose is not digested by our body, but we eat it when we eat plant-based foods, and we get rid of it as waste. That's what we call fiber, that it just passes through our body, holds on to nutrients, and then when we're done with it, we flush it down the toilet. So let's review carbohydrates before we move on to the next item. Again, if you missed anything, please rewind and go back to the section so that you can fill in your notes properly. So carbohydrates, again, is our main energy source. Okay, our body uses it by eating fruits and vegetables. And its general structure is C6H12O6. There are two types of carbs. There's complex carbs and simple carbs, as we saw before. Complex carbs are usually our vegetables, like potatoes and yams and carrots and pumpkins and zucchinis and peas. They take a long time to digest and extract the energy from them. So those are your better options because they give you sustained energy. They hold your energy through the day. On the other hand, simple carbs, we're talking about our cereals, our grains, our breads, our pastas, our oatmeals, our rices, our farinas. When you eat those, they're a quick source of energy and they quickly give you energy. Okay, back to this chart. We knocked off carbohydrates. Let's go to the next section, lipids or fats. Lipids or fats are considered concentrated sources of energy. While carbohydrates were quick sources of energy, these are concentrated sources of energy. So one drop of fats or lipids contains more energy than a drop of carbohydrates. Why does our body need lipids? Because we store them in our body for later use. We store them for energy that we might need at some other time. How are the lipids made up? Well, if you look here, the monomer is that they are made up of fatty acids and glycerol. And when you add those together, you make a chain of fatty acids and glycerol, and you come up with a chain of lipids. So again, lipids are considered long-term storage, concentrated sources of energy. And if you look at the picture, where do we get our lipids from? We get our lipids from nuts and seeds, avocados, oils like olive oil, sunflower seed oil. Let's take a look a little more deeply into the structure. So the structure of a lipid kind of looks like a backwards 3. Well, because it has one glycerol component here on the edge and 3 fatty acids. Okay, and when you build this up, it's considered a lipid. Now, you also heard of good fats and bad fats. Let me explain this. There are bad fats and good fats. Why do we call them bad fats? These are our saturated fats. Or bad fats that come from animals. Why are these considered bad fats? Because they increase your chance of a heart attack. When you eat things like butter, lard, and grease, when you eat things like cheese and bologna, and fried meat and hot dogs, and French fries, which were fried in grease, and potato chips, which were fried in oil, these animal fats get stuck to your arteries and they increase your chance of a heart attack. So you want to limit or stay away from these bad fats and eat plenty of good fats. Okay, these good fats or saturated fats, unsaturated fats, these are necessary for health. Remember, we said that the outside of the cell membrane was made up of lipids. It's made of fat. Other parts of our body surrounding our organs are a layer of fat to keep them protected and keep them warm. So fat is a necessary part of our diet because our body does need them. But these healthy fats or good fats, you can eat them and our body uses them in the right way and do not cause negative health issues. So for example, the oils found in fish, the oils found in olives, avocados, nuts, and seeds. These are our good fats that actually maintain good health in our body. When we talk about bad fats, we automatically think of cholesterol, and cholesterol is one of these bad fats. Cholesterol is actually considered a steroid. We'll talk a little bit more about steroids, but it's not the steroid that you take when you are working out. Because steroids have a powerful effect on our body, cholesterol is considered a steroid. And where do we get cholesterol? Cholesterol is produced mainly by our cells, but extra cholesterol is coming from our food. When we eat eggs, milk, steak, pork, cheeses, all those foods contain cholesterol. As you see from the picture, cholesterol also comes from our liver. It's naturally made in our liver. But when there is too much cholesterol or there's inflammation in the body, the cholesterol tends to glue itself to the inside of our blood vessels. And when the cholesterol glues itself and gets stuck there, starts to pile on and starts to make the blood vessel very, very tight and blood cannot pass through. So it becomes like a traffic jam. When that traffic jam closes and there's no movement of blood, that's what we call a heart attack or a stroke. So limiting cholesterols is the best way to go. Another way our body uses lipids is to make hormones. So actually, hormones are made of fats. That's why they have a lasting effect on our body. The two main hormones that determine your gender are estrogen and testosterone. Estrogen is the female hormone. Okay, it's what makes girls girls and what gives them their womanly appearance. Without estrogen, female breasts wouldn't develop, ovaries and uterus would not function correctly to reproduce, and also makes skin softer, increases breast growth, and minimizes hair growth. So all the characteristics that make women women. On the other hand, testosterone is the male hormone. Without testosterone, men wouldn't have their manly qualities. So what effect does testosterone have on humans? Testosterone thickens skin, and we know because men have usually thicker skin than women. It stimulates the male organs. It also increases the mass of your muscles and also increases the mass of your bones. It produces extra hair on your body, including facial hair and body hair. Basically, all the characteristics that make men men. So, as a review, wrapping up lipids. Lipids are long-term energy storage in our body. There are good fats and bad fats. And lipids are used as hormones in our body, mainly estrogen and testosterone, and even cholesterol are made of lipids. Let's move on to the next section, proteins. Now, when you think of proteins, you think of bodybuilding, you think of protein supplements. But mainly, protein comes from food. Foods like chicken, steak, beans, fish, shrimp, soybeans, cheeses, and eggs are major sources of protein. When we eat these proteins, what do they do in our body? Proteins have two major jobs. They build things up or tear things apart. It's very simple. They build things up or tear things apart. What kind of things do proteins build up? They build up structures in our body like our muscles. So that's why when you think of proteins, you think of bodybuilding, because when you are building muscle, you're going to need protein, extra protein in your diet to help build your muscles. Protein also builds up our skin and our blood. What is a protein made out of? If you look here in the picture, protein is made out of chains of amino acids. Okay, you take one amino acid and you add it to another amino acid to another amino acid, and you have what we call a polypeptide chain or a protein. So why do bodybuilders take amino acid? Because amino acids are the building block of protein. So if you take amino acids, what is your body going to do with them? It's going to build protein. Okay, in this picture, one amino acid is usually drawn as a pearl. Okay, one amino acid is attached to another, attached to another, attached to another, and those, once you have enough amino acids attached to each other, they can build a protein. Okay, again, whenever you see pearls that are strung together, this usually means that they are amino acids and that they are being added together to build a protein. Okay, again, so what are proteins used for in our body? Proteins build muscles. Our muscles are built of proteins. Our skin is built from proteins. But I also said that proteins tear things apart. They have two jobs. They put things together or tear things apart. Look at this little video. It's a corny little video, but it'll help you understand and memorize that proteins have two jobs.
So, what do you do for a living?
I lift things up and put them down.
Excuse me?
I lift things up and put them down.
Okay, here's the strength
I
circuit.
lift things up and put them down.
Over here,
I lift things up and put them down.
and this is our stretching area.
I lift things up.
So, this is a funny little way of memorizing what proteins do. Remember, proteins do two things. They only have two jobs. Like the bodybuilder, I lift things up and put things down. They only do two things. They put things together or tear them apart. Now, an easy way to remember them, remember this bodybuilder. Bodybuilders drink protein. What was he drinking? He was drinking protein to build his muscles. And muscles are made of proteins, and they only have two jobs. Put things up, put things down. Put things together or tear them apart. What are the proteins that tear things apart? We call those enzymes. Okay, enzymes tear things apart in our body. So when you eat something, as soon as you put it in your mouth, your saliva contains enzymes that start to break down the food. That's why we chew our food and our mouth starts to water when we think about food, because our body's getting ready to use the enzymes in our saliva to start breaking down the food. When you swallow the food, it goes into your stomach and it continues to be broken down by enzymes. Okay? Our body makes specific enzymes like protease, the little cartoon at the bottom, that break down meat and seafood. There's special enzymes that break down fats, and there's special enzymes that break down sugar and alcohol. So proteins have two specific jobs. They either build up the structures in our body or tear down things into simpler things so that our body can use them again. Okay, again, as a review, proteins build things up or tear things apart, and the building block of proteins is amino acids. Okay, we've covered 3 macromolecules so far. Let's move on to the last, nucleic acids. Nucleic acid is information storage in our bodies. Now, if you look at the monomer, okay, the single unit, one nucleic acid looks like this. Okay, we'll get deeper into nucleic acids when we talk about DNA and RNA, but one nucleic acid looks like this. It has a phosphate group. What do you think this is? This is definitely a sugar, and here is a base. Okay, now if you take this structure and you add it to other nucleic acids and you make a chain, what do you notice? It looks like this backbone is always the same. Okay, phosphate, 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 and then sugar, 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 and what changes is the base. So this base is an A, this base is a T, this is a T, this is a G, this is a C, this is a G. These bases constantly change, and that's where the information is stored, because you can have a secret code made up of different combinations of bases. So this is why nucleic acids are considered information storage. They store information in our bodies, mainly in the form of DNA and RNA, because they have a unique code embedded on this side of the molecule. And so that code can be read, that code can be translated, and that code can be used to build proteins or other parts of our body. Again, nucleic acids are DNA. You've probably seen pictures of DNA. Our DNA is the basically the blueprints or the laws that each cell has in our body, and those laws dictate how the cell is going to work, how the cell is going to be built up, and how the cell is going to function. Okay, let's take a closer look at DNA. DNA is always pictured as a twisted ladder, but if you untwist that ladder, the code is revealed inside the DNA. And again, as the bases change, you can have an infinite amount of combinations that can translate into information. So again, whenever you think of nucleic acids, think of DNA, think of RNA, and think automatically of data storage, information storage. Okay? So that wraps up our audio lesson. Again, there are 4 macromolecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acid. And we come again to this slide that we saw at the beginning of the lesson to organize our thoughts. You might want to review the particular sections if you missed something at this point. So these are great notes that you might want to keep or highlight so that you have a quick access when you're studying for your exam. The first one, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are our main source of energy. They also are the structural component of plants. So we eat carbohydrates when we eat plants, fruits, and vegetables. Lipids. Lipids, or also known as fats, they are long-term energy storage. Our body takes in lipids and stores them just in case if we need fat for a rainy day. Say we don't eat enough carbohydrates, then our body starts to go into the fat storage and take our fat for energy. Now you can kind of see why the diets out there, like the low-carb diet, are very popular, because once you don't give your body carbs, it doesn't have an energy source. So the body starts to eat away at the fat that it has in its body. Now, are those diets healthy? No, because we need a balance of carbohydrates and lipids to have a healthy diet. And consuming the good fats, like we saw before, nuts, vegetables, nuts, olive oils, avocados, those healthy fats are good for good sources of energy. The next one, proteins. Proteins build things or break things down. So proteins build structures like our muscles and our skin, while enzymes in our saliva and in our digestive system break down the foods that we eat. And last, nucleic acids, also known as DNA and RNA, they are the information storage in our bodies, in our cells. The DNA, remember, is inside the nucleus, and it holds the information for all the cell. And again, that information is shown in different combinations of nucleic acids. So I hope this general overview of macromolecules has helped you understand the cell a little bit better. We'll be doing activities to further understand these, but make sure you go back and check your notes and check the slideshow if you've missed anything.